commitment without a doubt. First of all, as I start, I want to say thank you to the JCPS family just for what they've had to do, especially over, we say over now closing in on 2 years. But specifically this year has been really challenging, this school year. And I think everyone in the JCPS family has stepped up and worked exceptionally hard. But I really want to talk about, the 95% of our employees that are in schools right now and the work that they are doing. And I can tell you this, first off, anytime you're a teacher, teaching's a tough gig. It is hard. It is hard work. Being a teacher in a pandemic during an employee shortage is even that much harder. Being a school leader at any time, I've done it for many years. School leader in January at any time is really difficult and challenging. It requires incredible leadership skills. To do that here this January, during a pandemic, during an employee shortage, during a surge in COVID cases caused by Omicron, only makes it that much more challenging. And so we got teachers, leaders, educators out there that are stepping up every single day to cover classes, to make sure that social distancing, quarantining, all of those things that we've had to do, it's now even magnified by what we're having to take on right now. So I can't say enough about the work that our school leaders and our teachers do every single day to keep our kids in school. And I do want to talk a little bit about what we've done here in JCPS when it comes to COVID mitigation. And so at any time, perfect, no. But I do think I want to highlight what we've done just in the past 12 months. I looked at my calendar 12 months ago, and we were having our first COVID vaccination press conference to talk about how we were going to roll out the vaccines with Metro Health at Broadbent Arena. And over the course of, I think around the second or third week of January, we had Nurse Bonnie. She was our first employee to get vaccinated. Over about the next 6 weeks, we vaccinated thousands of JCPS employees to the point now where right at about 90% of our employees are fully vaccinated. And I will say that thank you to Kentucky Department of Education and the JCPS Board of Education for providing the incentive to do that with the $100 from Kentucky Department of Education and the $100 matching from the Board of Education here at JCPS. All of those employees that are fully vaccinated will be receiving that $200 stipend on this week's paycheck. So I would want to highlight that. But from vaccine clinics to an incredible amount of testing, I would put the testing that we have done here in JCPS up against any district in the nation, and vaccination clinics. And I think all you have to do is this weekend drive around any of our schools to see the lines for people to get vaccinated, and as we extended hours to make sure people could get tested to know that they were safe to come back to school. We implemented the test or vaccine for employees, which, that was very controversial, and a lot said that we couldn't get that done. We've got that done, and once again, 90% of our employees are vaccinated. We implemented Test to Stay program, one of the few districts who has done that successfully, Test to Stay, to ensure those that may have to be quarantined because of a close contact can stay in-person school. Test to Play was another that thought that we couldn't get that done, but we implemented the drive-through and walk-through testing at every middle and high school so that we could have Test to Play. And then masking, as you know, continues to happen in JCPS. All of this in spite of what I would say, schools being left with the burden of carrying COVID mitigation when throughout communities across America there seems to be very little COVID mitigation going on, and schools being the one to take the brunt of that. And obviously then our staff has to deal with that every day as cases rise. So all of these things we continue to do. Obviously, as we came back to school, I think, we saw probably over the break not a lot of kids across America following those masking and mitigation things that we want to have happen. And so we've really worked to make sure that we double down over these first few days to ensure that we return to all of those mitigation practices that are so important. So let's talk about where we are right now, because I think that's very important, and the challenge that takes place every single day for us. Clearly, ensuring that we can hold schools safely with the employees that we need in school is the challenge that we face every single day. That is a challenge that a group of leaders come together to evaluate every single school, to look at positive cases among staff and students to ensure that we can hold school the next day. It is a very difficult process, day by day, to ensure that we can do this. There is nothing more for us than the need and the desire to be in-person learning right now. You know, we came into this school year feeling that this would be the school year we could really focus on the recovery process for kids, that recovery process for relationships, supporting kids who have been through a lot of difficult experiences and trauma, but also recovering those academic standards and things that we know kids, we just couldn't replicate perfectly during NTI. There's no doubt about it. And what we saw were younger kids struggled more than our older kids in NTI. Unfortunately, you know, this year has been marked mostly by COVID mitigation. You know, there's very little doubt about that as we have had to quarantine thousands and thousands of students, staff members as well, which has exacerbated that employee shortage that we have. So where do we stand right now? We get a lot of questions about NTI. And let's, you know, I'm going to be as candid as I can be about this. I spoke about this back in September when the legislature passed the most recent bill. We stood outside. Many of you were probably there with me. I think we were in the parking lot doing a press conference, getting my reaction to it. Many of the steps that the legislature took was positive. But I also said at that time that I had a significant concern about only having 10 days of NTI. As a matter of fact, I will quote from September 10th what I said when I was asked. I think we needed more flexibility with NTI days. I want to stay in person. I don't necessarily want unlimited NTI days, but I have a real concern with only 10 NTI days that it's going to be a real struggle, not just in JCPS, but throughout the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky. And that is where we are right now. So we have 10 NTI days. There are 21 days left through the first week in February. As we have talked to experts locally and at the state level and followed the national narrative as you have, it looks that Omicron will most likely peak towards the end of January. And so with that being the case and talking to health experts, we most likely have not seen the worst of Omicron when it comes to our community and our schools. So with 21 school days through February, and that's to say if that happens, we have 10 NTI days that we clearly have to make sure we use. There is a great fear for me that we will use our 10 NTI days and come to a point where we cannot hold school effectively and not have the tools we need to make sure that we continue safely in-person school. The legislature has given us 10 days. That's what we have. We have 4 additional days that JCPS goes above and beyond the 1,062 required hours by state statute. But state statute clearly says we have to have 1,062 hours in by June 30th. So that puts us in a very difficult situation on a daily basis to make a decision that, yes, you know, it's been tough these 2 days we've been in school, just 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, to make sure that we have the staffing to stay in school. But we also have to make sure that, you know, we use our days extremely effectively. You know, I will call on the legislature. As I said back then, I know we need more than 10 NTI days. This is just assuming that Omicron is the last variant that we will face, which is very difficult to assume. We have no idea what February, March, April, and May might bring us as we move forward. So, you know, I know we're going to need a lot more flexibility. I know there is a proposal out there, legislation around increasing to 10 remote days. I appreciate that, but I do think there are going to need to be additional days for the entire district, additional NTI days, because this is something that affects every single school on a daily basis, and it's very difficult for us to pinpoint school by school when we have the numbers that we have. So I would call on the legislature and those to ask your legislator to give us more flexibility when it comes to NTI. We do not want to go to any type, and I want to stress this, any type of permanent NTI which was marked by the 1920 school year. In the same way we will not be taking NTI on a day-to-day basis. So we will not say we're going to NTI for one day. As we talk to medical experts, Eva Stone, who I want to thank, who has just been a warrior through all of this. I don't think she ever imagined doing all this when she took this job, but the great work that she's done. One day of NTI will not do much for us when we are talking about clearing out, so to speak, those that are quarantined or have positive cases. So we will be looking for multiple days, although we will not, obviously, with only 10 days, be making any type of permanent or long-term NTI decision. But we will look, obviously, to pair it with weekends, holidays, those type of things, so we can get as many days in a row to see how many that can come out of quarantine, what we have to do. We are continuing to follow our state guidelines around Healthy at School guidelines, which continues to say 10 days for quarantine for positive cases. We believe we are going to get some new guidance, but I do not believe that we will see that change. That 10-day will most likely remain the same. So, you know, for us, we're going to continue to monitor that data every single day. Every day that we can be in school and ensure that environment, we will do that. But we also know that we had to prepare for NTI. So I got a lot of questions. You know, kids are preparing for NTI. Teachers are preparing for NTI. Yeah, of course we are. We have to prepare for NTI. We know that's probable at some point in the next several weeks, and we have to make sure that we are ready to go and give our kids fantastic instruction, the best we can possibly give virtually, make sure every kid has the device that they need in order to be ready the minute we need to do that. So we're going to continue to communicate with our families on a daily basis. You know, we meet every single afternoon and evaluate the data at every single school. We would ask our families to monitor that communication, continue to look for that. We'll continue to do what's best for our students. It's a very challenging time, without a doubt, in education. I don't know if there's been a more challenging time at any point during this whole pandemic. And nationally, this is a significant issue, as I talk to superintendents across the nation, that we're just all wrestling with right now. What's the best thing to do for our kids to make sure that our kids continue to learn, are safe, and we follow all the state guidelines that have been placed on us, which we have to do. So we're going to continue to work hard. We'll follow up and end this with once again saying thanks to our schools, our leaders, our educators, our teachers for the incredible work they are doing under incredibly difficult circumstances. Happy to take any questions that you have, and I'll try to remember to repeat the question for those watching online. Go ahead.
What's the benchmark number of cases or staff out, students out, where you would say, okay, we need to do NTI?
Well, you know, that's a really difficult question. And, you know, people want me to say that there is a benchmark that I will say, especially when this amount of staff members are out. But it varies so much from building to building. You know, that's the very difficult part of it is, and at a high school, we might have 15 teachers out, and in elementary school, we might have 5 teachers out. But both of those can be significant on the school community when you talk about a smaller elementary school that has 5. So, you know, in all honesty, there is not a benchmark. We send all of our resource teachers, central office administrators to go cover into schools when we need. We're picking that up as much as we possibly can. But we will make that determination, obviously, as we see higher and higher cases, and it at some point becomes unsustainable, and that is a judgment we just have to make.
Good morning, Dr. Polio.
Good
Lauren
morning.
Adams from WLKY. I think every single newsroom and news outlet here has gotten emails saying there was 47 teachers out at my school this day, or my child's classroom, this or that. What's the worst that you've seen in just these 2 days? Paint us a picture. Was it an elementary school? What's coming across your desk? What kind of phone calls are you getting?
Well, if someone said 47 teachers out at a building, I'm not sure where that was, but I don't think it was in JCPS. But we have. I mean, you know, I think what we've seen, and it's total staff members. I want to say this. Teachers, yes, is a huge issue, but obviously we have support staff and security and things like that, assistant principals that face the same challenges as well. So we look at total staff members. I don't want to be quoted on this, but I'm thinking, what we've seen is about 18 to 20 staff members is about what we've seen as the highest being out in a school. I can't say that exactly, but that's what we've seen. That now we get coverage for subs, but we do have schools that have 10 and 12 uncovered classrooms and subs, and so that puts that burden on us sending central office staff when we can. There's not that many that are going to cover that number, but also to teachers and support staff in schools, so it makes it very, very challenging. Quite candidly right now, we are at about the point where it's going to be difficult to continue on past this with where we stand right now.
Dr. Polio, my question actually went to subs as well. Is the sub pool big enough right now? And what can the district be doing to bring in more of those people so support staff don't have to go fill teaching positions?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. The sub pool is nowhere close to where we need it to be. And I'll give an example. And these are, I want to say rough estimates, so I'm sure we could give you exact estimates, so don't quote exactly on the numbers. But before the pandemic, we had about 500 subs that would take a job every single day. Back in the fall, it was down to 350. So you can imagine a substitute teacher, maybe a retired teacher who was coming back to pitch in and sub. During a pandemic is not something that is real desirable. So we lost about 150, so we're down to 350. I don't have that exact number that's been working yesterday and today, but my guess is it's much lower than that. Being that we're in the Omicron surge. This is a problem all across the nation right now. That's going to continue even after this. I think we're going to have to do some things to reckon with this as an education industry about how we are going to, as 10 years ago, this was not the case. But everywhere now, there's a severe shortage of subs. One of the main things that we did, and we have a lot of subs who work 2 or 3 days. We struggle the most. And we haven't had a Monday or a Friday yet after the holiday break. We struggle the most on Mondays and Fridays with our subs in schools, so that's why we provide an incentive. If a sub works 20 days in a row, which is really 1 month of school, they get a $500 stipend. If they work at one of our high-need schools for 20 consecutive days, they get a $1,000 stipend. And that's a pretty good deal, I think, for a substitute teacher for 20 days. Even if we look at college students and younger folks who may be interested in doing that, to work in a high-need school, get $1,000 at the end of every month is a pretty good check.
To clarify on NTI days, is that, if you go into NTI, is that across the entire district, or can you kind of a la carte, oh, well, I've got a school here that is above whatever threshold you determine, we're going to put them in NTI for 2 or 3 days. Well, now that school is down, its allotment, or is this a district-wide?
So right now, on December 31st, the statute that provided remote learning days for individual schools, that ended. And so we go back now to what as we have always had if you applied for it and got approved by the state, which is 10 NTI days for the entire district. So currently there is no mechanism to do individual schools. Now I believe there is in a bill that's going in front of the Education Committee and will probably be voted on, a proposal for 10 remote days, which could allow us to do that. But I want to say again, with 155 schools and the complex transportation system that we have in a large district, that becomes very difficult to start just surgically doing. I think in a district that might have 5 to 10 schools, that challenge isn't as significant. So I think that could go, but, I'll say again, we don't want unlimited NTI days. I don't think that's what we're asking for. But I do think more NTI days for the whole district are needed.
Dr. Polio, how much notice are families going to get if and when the district goes to NTI?
So, and once again, we want to be as open and transparent with our families as possible. We meet early afternoon or mid-afternoon once, high schools, middle schools are done for the day. Our leadership team meets. We collect the data on every school. So, we collect the data together on every school. We look at the spreadsheets every day so that we can make a determination, prior to end of the workday, a 5 o'clock determination. So if you saw yesterday, we sent out notice at that point that we would have school the next day. It's very difficult and challenging for schools. It's very difficult and challenging for us, and probably most difficult for families. But once again, when we make that decision, it will not be just for a one-day period. We would do, so for instance, and I'm not saying it, if we had to do that tomorrow, we would probably do it for multiple days through the weekend to ensure that we clear out those that might be quarantining. So, we want families to have that as early as possible. Now, on top of that, we have inclement weather coming in today, or tomorrow, excuse me. So that adds to the challenge of all of this, that inclement weather on Thursday and Friday. We'll have to be making some decisions on that as well. So, now, I say that, we love to make those decisions before the night if we can, but when we're looking at it right now and the snow may be coming in mid-morning, those are one of those things that we have to get up at 3, 4 in the morning to make that decision. So that's adding some complexity to this for the next couple of days as well.
I do have a final question for you. You've been at the helm now for several years, most notably March 2020, we made that decision to send everybody home. In your opinion, Dr. Polio, is this the worst that you have seen it?
Well, I think it is the most challenging for schools and school personnel, without a doubt. I said when I went into this in March, whatever this was, when I stood in the same room, when we first said we were going to NTI a Thursday, like March 13th might have been the date of 2020. I thought at that time there was no way we would be able to implement NTI based on the challenges ahead of us. Kids without devices, internet, teachers have never taught, so I thought that would be the most challenging, and it was very, very challenging. Each and every decision along the way has been a major challenge, and it has been gut-wrenching, to be honest with you. So whether it was that time, whether it was when we returned back to start the 2020-2021 school year, to make that decision, to make the decision about athletics, to make the decision to come back to school a year ago was very challenging and difficult, very controversial, all the vaccinations. But as far as burden on school and challenges for schools, teachers, and classroom, I think this is the most difficult by a long shot.
Dr. Polio, is this on? This is Jess Clark with WFPL. Omicron is different than other variants, so I'm wondering if you all have given any thought to actually changing the mitigation measures, requiring N95s for students, or dispensing with sports, reining in some of the more high, areas where it's more contagious.
Yeah, so, well, we continuously have discussions on mitigation factors, what we think we're doing successfully, what we're not doing successfully, where we've got to make changes. I mean, for those of you who haven't been in a school, there's 96, we have several thousand in virtual, let's say 90,000 kids in school. I have a teenage daughter. Getting teenagers and children to follow these guidelines on a regular basis for 7 hours a day is a big challenge at any time. I will say this again. If we measure our mitigation strategies and factors against all districts in this state around us, the Commonwealth, and the country, I'd put us up against anybody in what we're doing, including test to play. I don't know of another district out there that is running test to play in order for kids to participate in athletics. But I think our focus has been, we're doing the right things with mitigation, and the things that we can control, unfortunately, outside impacts us pretty significantly. When you have, let's just say this, a basketball game tonight in downtown Louisville that could have 15,000 people in the Yum Center, probably most without a mask. And then, we're being asked about the mitigation factors that we're putting into place. But I'd put us up against anybody, but what I think we're doing the right things. We've just got to continue to enforce those and make sure they're being implemented with fidelity at every location.
Are the tests to play, that's still rapid test?
Yes,
That's still
yes,
the
that's
antigen
correct.
test?
Yes, that's correct. I
Okay.
believe so.
You said that the decisions made kind of on a day-to-day review of the data with the school leadership, sometimes later in the afternoon. We saw when the district went home for the year in 2020, the logistical process you had to go through to get a lot of kids computers and Chromebooks. How quickly could you get students those things now if you had to turn this thing on a dime?
Guess I haven't been, that just hit me. I haven't been good at repeating the questions. I apologize, Mark. How quickly are we prepared to turn towards NTI is the question, and get kids computers and devices. That's essentially what we wanted to do when we came back, which was, early, in mid-December, right as we were going into break. We knew this could be potential, so we we asked our school leaders to prepare for the potential for NTI. My message to leaders was, it is not imminent. This is not something that we are saying is going to happen, but we must be prepared as a district to do this. And so over the break, our school leaders were doing that. And then we had Monday as a professional development day, where we wanted to make sure that our teachers had the ample opportunity and time to prepare, to make sure that we did that. And yesterday, that schools could get Chromebooks, devices to kids who need them, and teachers could get information to their kids in case that happens. Now, when you're talking about 155 schools, nearly 7,000 teachers, 90,000 kids, rumors get out there that means we're going automatically to NTI, which is not the case. We are evaluating it, but we do believe we are prepared at this point, if we need to transition quickly to NTI.
Yesterday, first day back at school, another gun in a backpack incident at one of the school's PRP in this case. How concerning is that to you, and what action is the district taking to kind of try to cut down on these incidences where we're seeing guns turn up at schools?
Well, it's concerning anytime that happens. But once again, I think we right now are looking at it and say, as a community, are we okay with a high school kid obviously having a gun in his backpack, probably the majority of the break? Are we okay with a 10-year-old having a gun in their backpack? And we've got to do something as a community right now with the amount of guns that we have in our community. I think that's a major issue across this country right now. But we will be presenting a security proposal to our board next Tuesday night, and are moving as quickly as we can on that. Thank you. Have a great day.